You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. All right, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. My name is Clark from 5cardguys.com, and you can also find me at 5cardguys on Instagram and on YouTube. This is episode 262 and the first episode of 2025. It also happens to be the first episode of season 5 of the podcast, and since this podcast is produced by 5 Card Guys, you see what I did there? I thought we could start this year with a special episode talking about how 5 Card Guys got started. Now, my regular podcast co-hosts Hyung and John aren't with me today, but I got a couple of special guests to help me out specifically for this episode because they are 2 of the original 5 guys that started 5 Card Guys with me about 8 or 9 years ago now. Hard to believe. So David and Cossa, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
It's a long time coming, and I'm glad we could do this to kick off season 5, so I'm really excited about it. But I'm going to tease something real quick right off the top, and I promise we'll get into it later in this episode. But David and Cossa are also the 2 friends I've talked about on this pod before who sold their Juan Soto Orange Refractor rookie autograph card for $144,000 US, which was a fun and crazy and insane story of how all of that happened. But let's start from the beginning with how we got together to start 5 Card Guys, and we'll end with why you guys both deserted me in the end. And but okay, so if I recall correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I got back into sports cards after randomly reading a blog. This is me personally. And I think I started talking to you guys about it, you know, whether I was at church or whenever we hung out back in the early days. And along with a couple of our friends, which makes 5 of us, hence the name. So I remember talking to you guys about starting a sports card website with, you know, the hopes of monetizing it one day. But that kind of evolved into us just buying hobby boxes together because we wanted to split the cost and see if we got any hits, right? So does that sound about right to you guys? I know there's a lot of other details, but what do you guys remember about when we first met?
I do remember that. Like, I remember us just wanting to get into baseball cards, or I don't even know if it was just baseball cards, but I think at that time it was just baseball cards.
It started with baseball cards.
Yeah. And then I do remember, like, you did talk about a website, and there was an actual website at that time, and you guys were just writing articles on different cards. And but yeah, and then we eventually went into the box breaking. We pooled in our money, and then it just ended up hoping to hit some good cards. And then you, obviously, Clark, was the one who would like go online and check the prices and see if there's any values, any good hits. And I think that's how it all started. And we would just kind of meet up
periodically. Every couple months or so.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my interest was, I like the idea of investing in these trading cards. And it was definitely a hobby, but then there was also the intrigue of actually, making money and flipping. That was the part that I liked, that drew me into this whole area, is being able to see if we could, buy a card, hold it. It's basically speculation,
right.
But you hope that this player or this prospect will, do something significant, and you're able to capitalize.
Yes.
At the right moment. So I remember there were a few cards that, aside from the box breaking, there were a few cards that we actually bought through, I guess, auctions like eBay.
Yep.
One that comes to mind was the Bregman.
Alex Bregman. Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I think we also got a green refractor of Dansby Swanson.
Oh, yes. That was our first flip.
That was our first one. Yeah.
Did we make any money on that?
I don't remember.
We did.
remember, though, on our first break, What was that picture that we got?
The pitcher.
Remember we named our chat group after him. It
Oh,
was like
David Hess.
David Hess. So originally it wasn't 5 Card Guys, it was the David Hess Sports Club, right?
People listening to this right now, it's like, who the heck is David Hess? Exactly. He didn't work out, okay?
But it was a blue refractor.
Yeah.
Right?
Number to 150. Blue refractors are still number to 150. We're like, oh, if this guy turns out, to be a real pro, we're going to make money.
Oh, I just kept remembering, like, always trying to check his stats, see how he's doing, and then
He got blown out every game. Became a middle relief pitcher, and then it didn't work out with David Hess. I almost forgot about that. But we had Bregman and Dansby Swanson. Going back to Dansby, I remember we made a couple $100. Like, that was our first real flip, and I remember, like, buying into the green refractor at the time. It wasn't cheap. Like, it wasn't dirt cheap or anything, because it was a green number to 99. And Cossa, I believe, was the one that said, oh, let's get into Dansby Swanson. Like, Cossa is kind of the risk taker of the group. Eh? He's like, yeah, it just costs a few $100 and we could flip it. And I think I remember kind of hesitantly going in on it.
Oh, but Dave knew a lot about Dansby Swanson because he was like a Atlanta Braves fan, so he was pretty high on him too at that time.
Yes, I think we bought the card after his first full season with the Braves. So he got traded from the Diamondbacks to the Braves, and I think there was a lot of I would say a lot of hype around him. So I thought, I see this guy as having a good future with the Braves. So I thought, why not?
Yeah, and to people who don't know, Dave, who was born and raised in Toronto, is a huge Atlanta Braves fan for some reason. Why is that?
I started following the Braves when Dave Justice, he was what was it, in 1990? He was a big prospect for the Braves, and I liked the guy, so I ended up following the Braves because of him, and I've stuck with them since. And yeah, unfortunately, it didn't work out in 1992, but it's okay.
Yeah, we remember 1992 because the Jays beat the Braves, and it was an amazing feeling.
Yeah, and that also tells you how old we are.
Well, I did have a reel on me getting Joe Carter's autograph after 30 plus years, so people know that we're all kind of in our 40s now, which is pretty much our key demographic of this podcast. So, yeah. I was just checking up that green Dansby Swanson card that we sold for a few $100, and it just recently sold June 2024. So just this past summer, BGS 9.5 Auto 10 for $51. So there you go.
Gosh.
We sold at the right time. Dansby Swanson, and he did have a high, top prospect pedigree.
Yeah.
Right. So, that shows you about prospecting. You got to flip quickly with those guys because not everyone can be a Shohei Ohtani or a Juan Soto, which we'll talk about later. But I want to go back to what you were saying, Cossa, about the website and how we're just writing articles. And it was really 95% me. You guys weren't doing anything. So, guys, you have any articles to contribute? No, not really. But I don't fault you for it because obviously ripping wax, breaking boxes was much more fun than writing.
I mean, plus you were the writer. I mean,
right.
That is what you did.
That's true. Former journalist, everyone knows on the podcast, and it came more naturally for me. But we found out quick that if we really want to make money in this hobby, it was about flipping cards and not building up a following for our website. But fast forward, and we'll get into this at the end. I'm the only one that kind of kept it up because I just enjoy doing it, and we'll talk about why you guys want to do something else. But this is awesome that I get to talk about 5 Card Guys even after all this time, because I'm sure you guys follow some of the content I'm still putting out there, and we're almost at 50,000 followers on Instagram. So I love this hobby. But let's go back in history when we're talking about 5 Card Guys. And do you guys remember our first official quote unquote meeting? When we met at, I believe, Lloyd's condo at the time. Were you living with Lloyd at the time, Dave?
Yes, we were roommates.
Okay, so Dave and Lloyd's place, and then I think we ordered like a couple pizzas, had a bottle of wine, had some beers.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right?
like, was it originally like? Did we know it was all five of us coming, or did we come in and then because it was at Lloyd's house, he joined us and he became our fifth member?
He just came out of the shower one day, like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?"
I know like four of us were into it, and then I think I remember Lloyd being there, and then he's joined in as our fifth. I don't know. I can't remember.
Friggin' Lloyd, we really loved the name 4-Card Guys, and then Lloyd had to ruin it. That's a good segue of how we came up with 5-Card Guys. This is Cossa, I believe, who came up with the name. We were trying to think, we need a good name for our website. And then I guess by that time there were 5 of us just hanging out, eating, and then about to rip open a hobby box. So how did you come up with the name? Once and for all, settle it. Because I've been trying to communicate. I've been on several other people's podcasts. They're like, why'd you come up with 5-Card Guys? I'm like, it's my stupid friend Cossa. So now, out of your own mouth, what do you recall of coming out with that name?
Honestly, I just wanted something simple. And I knew because there were 5 of us, it really, honestly, like it, because I knew there was that burger joint, Five Guys.
Yes, very popular. Yeah.
Why don't we just do 5-Card Guys? It's simple, it's catchy, and I think it'll catch on. So then that's what I used, and then that's kind of like where I figured, it would hit. I didn't think it would actually be that great, but then you guys all agreed with it, and then here we are.
Just a simple story like that. And if you don't know Cossa, he always comes up with like jokes and thinks that everything is funny that we kind of politely laugh at, but then I think really none of us could think of anything better, so we just went with it, and there you go. There's the story once and for all how we came up with 5-Card Guys. I remember you telling me, Dave, about one of our first box breaks. You know how when you do everything for the first time you're super careful? Do you remember that time?
Yes, I do. It was at our place.
Uh-huh.
The time when Lloyd and I were roommates. Who was it that was actually doing the box break?
It might have been me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember Dave saying, "Okay, clear out all the glasses."
Yes. There was a lot of plates, a lot of glasses on the table, and I wanted to make sure it was debris free and free of any grease or any other contaminants.
Yeah.
I wasn't too fond of the fact that you didn't have gloves, but it's okay.
No white gloves or rubber or latex gloves too. Yeah. But it worked out. It didn't matter anyways, because those early box breaks we got nothing.
Yeah, it was a moot point. So.
Yeah, it was nothing good came out of those early box breaks. And you know what? Something's never changed, because I still haven't really gotten a major hit out of these stupid boxes. The only thing that's changed is that these boxes cost 3 times as what it did when we first started 8 or 9 years ago. I'm sure, even though you guys haven't been in the hobby day to day, like everything else in this world, everything is going up in price, and that includes sports cards. Okay, so we talked about our group name, and that's when I started all the social media accounts for 5-Card Guys. And I know you guys didn't really care about that, so I just kind of, in the hopes of monetizing our website, trying to get our name out there. Just a quick backstory. I had a Twitter account, which I kind of converted into 5-Card Guys because I had a few thousand followers on that account. I'm like, might as well just use this for our sports card. And I think I had like 3,000 followers on Twitter. I'm like, this is pretty good. And right now on Twitter, I have about 3,000 followers. It hasn't grown at all. But then, everyone was really getting into Instagram too at the time. Like it was, 10 years ago, right? Almost 10 years ago. And Instagram is not as big as it is now. Obviously it's a global phenomenon, and I just started to put up my own cards up on the 5-Card Guys Instagram account that I created, and it began with like some of the cards I owned, which wasn't a lot, and then it segued into some of the cards I wanted to get, and then I ran out of ideas for that, and then I started to see, let's look up on eBay, what are these high-end cards that people are selling for, and that's pretty much how 5-Card Guys got started, where I could post daily, and I've been doing that for about 7-8 years without skipping a day, which is kind of crazy. And then it's become reels and videos, and I've been trying to build up that content, and Instagram is the social media account that's by far grown the largest, with, like I said earlier, we're closing in on 50,000 hopefully by 2025. You guys surprised at all about the growth of 5-Card Guys? What do you guys think when I was like starting to just kind of grow that account?
Me, not really. I mean, really, you were the one who kind of spearheaded this whole group, and I mean, you were a hobbyist even prior to us coming together. So, and for sure, I mean, you had done most of the research, with collectibles, and so I mean, I'm not surprised that you've grown it to what it is today. And with your journalism background and your knowledge of social media, it's great seeing what it's developed into today, and I'm proud of you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think I remember you talking about it and what you started to do. And yeah, I think you are the type of person that is very diligent and consistent. And well, for me, I easily give up. Right? I'll have ideas, but then you're good at execution and just keeping up with consistency. I think that was the key with everything, because you would do it every single day, and then every week when we were talking about it at church, like, oh yeah, like I can see you actually start building up and start getting more and more exciting. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But I like what Cossa mentioned. He does give up easily on a lot of things, but he starts a million things too, which is, which kind of works out for, one of them's got to hit. that's Cossa's philosophy. And, he's done well with that in his life. But early on, us going together, I think that was key for me too. Like if I just had started by myself, I don't know if I would have kept it up as long as I did. And I think you guys, the five of us at least, have stuck with it for at least the first 2 or 3 years. And that was kind of fun to do. And especially I tell people on other podcasts when they ask me about the Five Card Guys or origin story. And we actually started before the pandemic. Like everything really blew up during the pandemic, but we started like maybe a year or two before. And then in year 3, I think everything kind of blew up. So with Five Card Guys, at least we had that kind of running start. Within the 2-3 years, I want to talk about this too. We've done several box breaks by that time, and then 2018 was the Shohei year. When we first began to realize this global phenomenon, and fast forward to now, 50-50 season, and all his cards are continuing to go up. But then early on, we're into the Shohei chase because now, I don't know if you guys know, but for every major new release, there are bounties for like the top cards. So anyone that can hit whatever the top chase is, there's someone giving a bounty of like 6 figures. So there's a Football Prism release right now, and Jaden Daniels is the top rookie QB. Alexis Ohanian, who started Reddit, he just recently put out a video putting a $200,000 bounty on anyone that hits that card. But Shohei, that there was a superfractor, which is a 1 of 1, and that's what we were chasing. Ultimately, that card sold for $185,000 or so, and then when that card sold, we're like, wow, that's crazy. Like I remember Lloyd and I had a bet on how much that card will eventually sell for, and I said, oh, it won't hit 100,000, right? And then of course it blows that mark, and I had to owe him a Shake Shack or something, but we were chasing it. And then do you guys want to tell the story of like what happened? We back at Dave and Lloyd's place again, I believe, and we said, okay, let's go in on a box. And then Lloyd wanted his own box. You remember that?
Oh, yes. Without telling us, I believe he decided to purchase his own box. So he did a parallel break while we were breaking our communal box. And well, I mean, good for him. But in the end, we got no hits or no notable hits from that.
I remember though, and Cossa could talk to this, but there are 2 boxes, and then Lloyd was like, okay, you guys, you choose the box that you guys want to break together, and I'll take the other box. And then we're like, no, we don't want to be the guy that chose the wrong box, and the Shohei Ohtani Superfractor is in that box that we didn't choose. And I feel like Cossa's like, let's just pick this box because no one was choosing anything. And then ultimately we got the better box, that had the bigger hit, which was like $75. And then Lloyd got a hit that was like $20 worth. So we won But at the end of the day, they're both probably worth nothing. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Actually, no, I don't. Honestly, like how much was a hobby box? Like,
Oh man, it must have been 250 at that point. Yeah,
that point?
250.
Were we better off just holding on to the box?
Yeah, for sure. Because it's the Otani rookie cards are still there, like, you know. So that's one of the things where some people actually do that. They buy the box sealed and they don't open it. And if you have a 2018 Bowman Chrome, that's going to be worth thousands of dollars because just for the potential of hitting a Shohei Otani rookie card. So in hindsight, guys, we should have just kept those two boxes sealed. 2018? So 6 years later, right? We could have been like, okay, let's flip it for however much it costs now, in the thousands for sure. But you know, hindsight's 2020. Yeah. So, okay, we're gonna go back a year from that box opening, and this is what I teased at the top about you guys going in on a. Okay, speaking of you guys doing your own break, the two of you. This is what I'm trying to wrap my head around. Okay, because we established that I was probably the most involved in the hobby with sports cards, and then, you know, one day I find out that you, Dave, and you, Cossa, go downtown to 401 Games and buy your own box. Just tell me the story. How did that even start? Or just the two of you go? Was it a random thing? You're like, oh, we're together. We have nothing to do. Like, you tell me the story.
Yes. No, we had no, you know, basically it was after, it was one Sunday where Cossa, just out on a whim, asked if we could go downtown and go to 401 Games and just see what they had available. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it was more spontaneous than anything. And so yeah, we went to 401 Games downtown, and we saw that they had the 2016 Bowman Chrome boxes, and yeah, we thought, you know, why don't we just get a box now, right? And just split the cost. And so yeah, I think it's not like something we kind of deliberated over. It just kind of happened on the fly.
You sure it wasn't like, let's screw the rest of the guys over, just the two of us will go? And this was 2017, so this was a year after 2016, so the prices might have even come down since then because it wasn't a brand new release at the time, right?
Yeah, like, well, I don't even think we were hunting for anything in particular. Like, Dave and I were just together, and we decided just to go ahead and go to the hobby shop and look for it.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if you guys were even around that time.
Obviously not, because I don't remember being asked. But Lloyd remembers being asked. Do you remember that? Like, was he around? And Lloyd said,
like, Lloyd wasn't around at that time. It was just literally just me and Dave.
Okay.
Lloyd was at his apartment where we opened it, and he just happened to be there.
oh, I see.
Right? And at that time too, the box was only like $90 for us.
That's insane.
It was like only $90 for that hobby box, and then
Canadian.
Yeah, Canadian.
Right.
And then so yeah, we just bought one, and then we decided to take it back to Lloyd's place, where you were staying too, and then that's when all the magic happened, right?
So when you got back to Lloyd's place, do you not offer him like, hey, do you want to go in on the break, or we're just using his place? You're just using his place.
Yes. I mean, so Lloyd was present, and yeah, it was on the exact same dining table where we did the box break for the Chasing the Shohei card.
Yeah.
And yeah, so okay, here's a funny story about that. So you had mentioned earlier how we had a choice between choosing one of two boxes,
Right.
when we were chasing the Shohei card. So Cossa actually pulled this stunt at the time when we were doing the box break for the Bowman Chrome 2016 box. And just as on a sidebar, who was the top prospect that people were chasing? Do you remember? I don't even remember. Was it
Chris Bryant on the 2016 box? Let me check quickly. On the cover of 2016 Bowman Chrome was our homeboy Vladimir Guerrero. He's in the set, and Michael Conforto. Remember Michael Conforto?
Yes.
Of the Mets, and now I believe he's with the Dodgers. He's been a journeyman. So Michael Conforto and Vladdy, I guess, were the chase if you're going by the guys on the box.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what I distinctly recall is so basically we had the box on the dining table, and however many packs were in the box, we split it and decided to just open it, separately.
Yeah.
At one point, Kosa asked me, "Hey David, how about you just keep the cards that you're gonna rip, and then I'll keep the cards, these packs that I'm gonna rip." And I said, "Wait a second! I thought we were in this together. Why are we now? why are we now like separating the cards?" And in hindsight, I should have accepted his proposal because
before you get into that, Kosa, what were you thinking? Were you thinking like I want to be greedy and what was, do you remember this stunt that you tried to pull?
That's exactly what I'm a risk taker. Right? I'm a risk taker.
Yeah.
And I was just looking. I just thought it would be more fun and more funny either way. Like it'd just be hilarious if I ended up with something much better than what Dave got. But obviously, I'm glad that we were in this together, like it should have been from the very beginning. I think it was funny. Is like we asked Lloyd too, right?
Yes.
What did you ask Lloyd?
We asked him if he wanted to join in on us.
Yeah.
And to be part of this. So instead of splitting it 2 ways, we split it 3.
$30 each,
essentially. $30. But then he opted out. I don't even know why he did. But do you remember?
No.
But yeah, I think he just decided
he just didn't
not to
have any interest.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so go on with the story. It was good that Kosa didn't get his way because
as I was ripping through the packs, I came across this orange refractor, and it was of a player I've never even heard of.
Right. And of course, Kosa's never heard of this guy either.
Yes. And we were just genuinely excited that we got an autograph card.
Right.
And even if it was someone that we never heard of, but right away, Kosa starts to Google him.
Yeah.
And he found out doing his search that this guy was a top prospect for the Nationals.
Right.
17 years old at the time, I believe.
Yes.
17 years old.
And for people who don't know, we're talking about Juan Soto, who just signed a $765 million contract with the New York Mets, highest in sports history right now. But yeah, so what did you remember of that, Kosa, when you hit Juan Soto?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, I didn't know who Juan Soto was at the time. I think I was just really excited to get an orange refractor, right? Because there's only like 25 of those.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw the name, I just remember just going through my phone and just looking up his history, his stats, or anything about him, and then everything I read just looked extremely positive. I'm sure they do this for all prospects, but at that time, because he's only 17 years old,
yes.
Like I wasn't even sure if he was drafted, but I think I remember he had a contract at 17-year-olds for like maybe a couple $1 million from the Washington. And I was like, if they're willing to pay this guy that much money, it must be like really good.
Right.
At least that was just what was going through my mind. And then sure enough, like, fast forward, every time as soon as he made his MLB debut, I started following him since then. And like while we were tracking, I remember there were a couple times when his card just started gaining more momentum.
Right.
And that was the time when Dave was like, let's sell it. I was like, but me, I'm a holder. Right? Like, why sell unless you actually need the money? It's like none of us were going broke at the time. So,
right.
Why not see what happens? And then anyways, that's always going to be my attitude. Like I'm always like a long-term holder.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember just being exciting. Just seeing his baseball stats like go up and up every single day.
Because you didn't have to wait long because he was pretty phenomenal early on. A lot of these young guys, especially as teenagers, like you were saying, they have all the potential in the world. And most of them don't live up to their potential. But Juan Soto won a World Series when he was 19, I think, Yeah. And, he started to build up accolades. And obviously we know now he's in his mid-20s. And he has so many more awards. And his stats are incredible. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think they fast-tracked him from single A all the way to the majors. Or I remember he did skip.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he had to go through all the different, stages to end up in the majors. And I'm not even sure what was the reason. Do you guys remember the reason why they called him up that early? Was it due to an injury?
It's always the case. Probably.
It was probably
yeah.
Harper, right? It was,
Yeah.
it was a Harper injury
Back in the day.
Yeah,
But that national team was loaded too, right? When they won the World Series. But yeah, you're saying, Cossa, that Dave wanted to sell early on. And do you remember, like, when you're tracking his prices, at what point Dave says, "Okay, let's sell at this price"? Like, do you remember that?
So I think there were like a few times. So the first time was when it was at $3,000. Like he wanted to sell it for $3,000.
Which is, you know what? Which is
that
a good chunk.
very early. That was very early.
But
because it's an orange refractor.
I mean, hindsight's 20/20. But if you bought a box for $90 and you're flipping over $3,000, that's a good flip.
Yeah, but in my mind, I was like, it's only $3,000.
but Cossa, remember, there's no guarantee with these prospects, right? I mean, he was a runner-up for the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, Ronald
Acuna.
Yeah,
right.
Your boy.
Yes. So I was torn, actually. I was happy for Ronald, but I would have preferred if Soto was Rookie of the Year because that would have elevated his value.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought, anything in the 4 digits, I was happy with. And yeah, so I think we were tracking what it was going for on eBay at the time. So I thought, yeah, why not? And, Cossa wisely said, listen, there's no urgency and we should hold it and see what happens.
So when did he ask again and what price was it? And I don't know, at one point, I began to notice Juan Soto because the world began to notice Juan Soto. I'm like, and then I found out you had the orange refractor. I'm like, what the frick? And then I said, as a good friend, I'm like, you should get that graded. And you guys gave it to me. Remember that? So I brought it to Sport Card Expo here in Toronto because I knew that would be the best way and the safest way to drop it off in person. And I sent it into Beckett at the time. And I don't know if you guys are aware, PSA is the king right now. Beckett has fallen off. They actually changed ownership a couple months ago because the previous owner, their holding group, their CEO got arrested for fraud. So anyway, that's a long story. So now Beckett is owned by another group and they're just sinking ship right now. But at the time, most of the baseball cards had BGS grading because that's just been the history. And now everything's PSA because it has more value. But I got the card graded for like $85. And do you remember? You thought it wouldn't come back at 9.5 because you thought that there was a...
Yeah, I thought because... I don't know. It just one of the corners looked a little like nicked in my eyes. That's
Who dropped it? Which one of you guys?
Immediately, I thought of Lloyd because when we did the box break, I did let him hold it, and I thought to myself, "Oh my goodness! I bet just out of contempt, he probably like flicked it or something."
Right.
But I do remember when you got back the grading. It was almost like when we saw that 9.5.
Yeah,
it was almost like getting that orange refractor again from the beginning.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that totally increased the value immediately.
Yeah, because there's a big difference between 9 and then 9.5.
Yes,
right? I knew we're gonna get at least 9 just from I'm not a professional thing, but from my eyes it looked really legit. But I didn't think I would get like 9.5, like we would get 9.5.
Yes. So once it was a BGS 9.5, you could really track the prices, right? Because you knew the grade, you knew the condition. So you turned the offer to sell it because both of you have to agree at $3,000. And then at what point did you go back again, Dave, saying, "Hey, it's up at this price point. Let's try to sell."
Yeah. So at one point on eBay, it started to well, I don't know if it necessarily sold at that price, but people were trying to sell it for about 25K US.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, okay, that's the price of a car right there. And so right. I thought, okay, maybe we should really consider doing it now.
Yeah.
And so I started to push Cossa more. At the same time, though, I didn't want him to do something he didn't feel comfortable with, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Right. We wanted to make sure it was a unanimous thing. Cossa actually at one point said, okay, listen, like I personally don't want to sell. I'd rather hold it, right? As he said before, because he is more of a long-term investor. But in my mind, I thought, well, we don't know. Like this guy could get injured. He could suddenly be, he can be involved in some kind of scandal, and that could affect, his
Wander Franco.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was a little nervous because I thought maybe this is the best price we will get for him, and I mean I knew the guy had potential, and there was nothing. And the good thing about Soto is that he's a very consistent hitter.
Yes.
So I mean,
still is.
Yes, and he didn't seem like someone who was very injury prone to me. So I mean, those are things that were, yeah, and that's the biggest fear when you have a card of a prospect, and then, unfortunately, like Ronald Acuna, right, with the ACL issue.
Yes, right.
So yeah, it could happen to anyone
For sure. And I mean, 25,000 is a chump change. So at that point, Cossa, were you like, okay, yeah, maybe? Or were you like, let's hold a little longer?
No, I wanted to hold. You know why? Because he was on a good team too. And I was like, if this guy just wins, like, if he wins like Rookie of the Year or like the MVP, he needed to win a title. He needed one accolade. Yeah. Right. And sure enough, like I was waiting. If this guy wins the World Series, then yeah, like this is a legitimate card.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought long term, like, man, this could be like the next Mike Trout.
Right. At the time.
This could be like a Mike Trout card. Like it could be that high. And then I just wanted to hold it. But at the same time, like I would have been fine if he was really adamant about selling it too. I don't know what changed his mind or something. Like why you decided like not to do it, like because I said I think I said I was like fine, whatever you want to do, like I'm okay with it. But
and then David said he was okay holding for a little longer.
Yeah. So at that point, I think the card was in Cossa's possession.
Okay.
And then so after it was graded,
right.
So Clark.
So gave first, it to Cossa. Yeah.
Yes. So Cossa was the custodian, and then he gave it to you to get it graded. Yeah. And then at one point, I believe it was in your home, Clark, for some time.
That's correct.
And I was a little nervous about that. I thought to myself, oh, he better not be like displaying this like in his living room or something. And anyway, and I remember when it got to the 5 figures,
right?
I politely asked you, do you think I can get that card from you? And so at one point you gave the card to me and I threw it into my safety deposit box.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm trying to remember what happened next because, there was a point where you were okay with selling it because you asked me if I could list it on eBay and kind of take care of the selling part because I was, at that point I wasn't selling 5-figure cards, but I was selling $1,000, $2,000 cards. And even I was uncomfortable. I was like, I had to ask eBay to increase my selling limit because if I want to list for a higher price, you have to go ask them to lift that limit. And then I did. And I was just kind of doing my own research because I didn't want to like make a big mistake, especially with your card, And at the time, Golden was becoming a thing. Like they had that auction house, and you guys didn't know anything about Golden, right?
No, you brought it up to us.
Okay, I brought it up to you. Yeah, I'm like, there's this company, Golden Auctions. They're becoming a bigger name, and this is before, of course, the Netflix series. What was it called again? King Golden, his show.
King of Collectibles.
King of Collectibles, yes. Season 1 and Season 2. So this was all before then, and I remember reaching out to first you guys saying, hey, I think this is a better option because they'll have more eyes on it, and then it's probably even safer to have them take custody of it and then go through the selling process, and everything was supposed to be smooth, right? But what did you guys think when I suggested that to you guys?
Well, just to backtrack a little, I believe you were also looking into another auction company. Do you remember?
Oh, yes. PWCC at the time, which is now Fanatics Collect. Yes.
And so I believe you were talking to someone there.
That's right.
About the potential of having, to consign the card there. And I don't think they were very professional with you.
I don't know if it was lack of professionalism, but they just didn't respond. So I guess so, right? But so they didn't respond, and they were, I think, the leading auction house at the other than eBay, which is anyone could go on it. And then I And then Golden, shout out to Golden. They're the ones that were pretty responsive. And I think they were also eager to make a name for themselves too. You know how new companies want to get started and they're looking for higher end auctions. So actually the gentleman that I email back and forth, he always periodically emails saying, hey, do you have any other high end cards? We'd be happy to auction it off. And in truth, I will never come close to the card at what it ultimately sold for. But that was at this point, it was like peak COVID, right? Do you remember that?
It was peak COVID. I remember. It was a good time to sell at that point.
Yeah.
Because everything was just shooting up. And obviously, Juan Soto, they got their championship in 2019.
Yeah.
And then, everything just started falling into place. And then you were pretty much acting like almost like our agent, almost kind of thing,
right.
Between like talking to Golden and then coming back to us. And then I just remember being so nervous when it was time to actually send the card to the auction, because it was somewhere in the States, right? It's like in the
New Jersey, where Golden's located.
So I remember like just waiting, like, did they get it? Like, they have to sign for it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's like supposed to be proof.
Yeah.
And but that was very nerve-wracking, but I'm glad at the end, like, it worked out, right?
They received it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was our first time doing anything like this. And when you're dealing with a card of that high value, I mean, if it was a $3,000 card and something happens to it, it gets lost or stolen in transit, then I mean, it sucks, but I mean, you can deal with it. But now we were potentially dealing with a card that was in the six figures,
right?
And we had a sense that it was going to be in the six figures, or based on what you were kind of
comping it as, at the time.
And so, we kept on asking. I remember we kept on asking questions like, "So, what's the procedure? Like, we want to go through it step by step, the logistics.
Yeah.
How do we end up getting it from my safety deposit box to this company we've never heard of, and what safeguards, what measures, would they put in place to make sure it gets there safely? And then you had mentioned that they had this whole process. And I remember even scrutinizing their contract. And I wasn't even fully happy with the terms of the contract. And I looked over it, like the entire thing. But in the end, I thought to myself, like, what are we going to do? they're not going to alter their terms, right? You either take it or leave it. And I'm pretty sure all the other companies kind of had the same terms.
Yeah.
So, we were nervous to part ways with it, but we trusted you, Clark, and I know that you did your due diligence and made sure that everything would work out. So, thank you.
And David is also a lawyer, so he was able to scrutinize the contract. And when he came back to me, I'm like, I don't know, what do you want me to do? I was like, the contract is a contract. I can ask you about it, or I can ask them about it, but at the end of the day, like you were just saying, they probably won't do anything about it. It's just you either accept it or not. Right. And I did my due diligence because obviously I'm friends with you guys, so I didn't want anything to happen to it. And going on these blog forums on people that ship their cards to these auction houses or even to graders, they have like the top tips on how to get it to wherever you need to safely. And it's like FedEx overnight, pay whatever it costs. And then, some people even fly and drop it off in person, right?
Cossa and I were actually debating whether we should pay for your round trip flight to go there in person and drop it off.
Oh man, I wish you had decided that. It's a free trip to New York, New Jersey area, drop it off. But it's funny because I was really nervous too. So while I was packaging it, I'm like recording everything and, every angle, just so in case, something happens at FedEx, if it gets lost or if it gets stolen, I have proof. And even looking at insurance and, it was early on too, like cards being this much, there's not a lot of insurance policies out there. I think there's more now, obviously, because there's more high end cards out there and there have been unfortunate cases of cards being stolen. Yeah. So it's a real thing, but for the most part, if you do FedEx overnight, it'll get there safely. And I remember, it was a couple $100 and just tracking it every day too, just like you guys. Yeah.
Clark, do we ever reimburse you for those costs? Or
yes, David, gave me a nice little commission. But yeah, no, it worked out because when I checked and they received it and they signed it, it's kind of like, I think it was a collective sigh of relief, right?
Yeah.
It's like it was in their hands.
Yeah.
And then it was like a month before it actually goes up on auction. So we had a month to just like wait for,
Yeah.
right? Do you remember that time?
I remember the waiting. Yeah.
And then do you guys remember the night it went up for auction, or the night the auction was gonna end?
So when it was live on the auction,
Yeah.
I forgot what the period is. Was it like how long before the auction ends?
It's about I feel like it's just a week or no, it might have been
it was
a lead
more than
auction,
that.
so it's like a month. Yes,
Yes.
about a month.
So the first time, when it first listed, I think it was listed for what? Was it 15,000?
10,000 to start. Yes.
10,000 to start,
For
and there was like no traction. I remember there was like zero traction. I remember being just, so this guy's only betting like $15,000.
Yeah.
Like it's worth way more than that. I'm like, oh man, this is a bad decision. But obviously, because like this is our first time doing it, but yeah, it was just I just remember being very slow from the get go.
And I think that's standard, right? If you watch
Yeah.
The King of Collectibles on Netflix, all the auctions are like, everyone's just like you guys. They're so nervous. Like, why isn't anyone bidding early on? And all the action happens at the last hour because everyone wants to like outbid everyone and not show their hand essentially too early, right? But yeah. So Dave, you tell me what you were thinking during the last night of the auction as it started to ramp up on the last few hours.
Right. So you we had a viewing party,
Right.
the three of us on Zoom.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
From our respective homes, and I remember my wife was there as well. Glued to the website.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was very exciting. In the final hours leading to the cutoff time.
Yeah.
Whenever that was, we start to really see the escalation of prices.
Yeah.
And we got the sense that it was basically down to two people or two individuals, right?
Yeah.
Who were kind of like, trying to outbid each other. And I have a question. If you're a prospective buyer on that auction site,
Yeah.
can you set like, can you automate the bids in such a way that, if a bid comes through, then
Yeah,
you can.
You can.
Oh, you can.
You can do that on
Okay.
eBay as well. Like, so you set your upper limit.
Right.
So if it won't go automatically to your upper limit, but the next highest bidder, if your upper limit is still like, for example, 200,000, and the guy bids 115, it'll automatically bid 120 for you. Like whatever the minimal interval is, and it'll keep on going to you up to your max bid. So you could set it up early like that, so you don't have to worry about
I
that
see.
part.
Honestly, my memory is kind of hazy, but I do remember it went past the cutoff time. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What is that period called? Where
Extended bidding.
extended bidding.
Yes.
Okay, and that's really when
Yeah.
things
So
start to
people
really
were
escalate.
serious about
Yes,
it. Yeah,
yes.
Start. And you mentioned that you're watching with your wife, and I don't know if your wife was watching too, Kosa, but even during or even after the final sale, which was $144,000, which I think is the peak price. Even now, it's a perfect timing. It's rare that you can say you sell anything on the top, but you guys did. I'm curious about their reaction in terms of like how much it sold for. Did they believe it? What was going on?
Gertrude wasn't Gertrude wasn't even with me when we did.
Okay.
Like I would just shout her, "Hey, we hit 6 figures." She was like, "Oh yeah, okay. Tell me when it goes like double that." She knows nothing
Right.
about baseball cards or anything of value, but yeah, and obviously at the end she was excited. She couldn't believe that that's how much money I ended up getting. We ended up getting.
Yeah, right.
But the thing is though, like I don't remember being able to see the 144 because this was different on our side. We only saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah, don't you remember only seeing the? I probably like it was like we only saw the auction price or something, but there's like a separate like a secondary because 144 is what it was.
Buyer's premium.
Buyer's premium.
You
or
might
something
be
like
talking about the buyer's premium, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then for you guys, especially with high-end cards, there's usually a buyer's premium that obviously the buyer pays, which is usually 20% of high-end auction houses. and then there's usually a seller's fee, but then we're able to waive the seller's fee, the fee that you would have had to pay to list. But with such high end, the auction houses know they'll get a lot of money from the buyer's side, and they want your business. They don't want you to go to a different auction house. So just a tip for people that have high end cards, you could probably negotiate the seller's fee to zero, because they will want your high end card to put in their auction. But how about you? Do you remember what your wife was saying?
Yeah, you know what? She was when I told her that it was going for about 25,000 on eBay.
Yeah,
she was all on board, like in terms of selling it then.
Yeah,
right. Because I mean, to think of a card worth that much in her mind, because again, yeah, she's not a hobbyist. She doesn't know much about collectibles. She thought that was an astronomical price. So yeah, she was blown away, of course, on the day of the auction when she saw. And I told her, by the way, this is in U.S. dollars, okay? So
right.
You can take out the calculator and figure out what it is in Canadian. So yeah, she was blown away, obviously, and very happy.
And shout out to Golden, because the wire transfer went okay. That was the other thing afterwards. Like, you got your money, right? and so that went through. And like I said, the representative from Golden still keeps in touch with me every once in a while to see if I have any big cards. So yeah, there you go. There's a free ad endorsement for Golden Auctions, who, I don't know if you guys know, they got recently bought out by eBay last year, I think. So now they're working closely with eBay. So yeah, there's the story. I always wanted to tell our audience that story. People have heard bits and pieces of it, but it's just insane, where the story started with the $90 hobby box. I'm happy for you guys. I'm not bitter anymore that you didn't include me. But, I got something out of it. I want to, wrap up with this, a couple more points, but when I was looking for the comp, like how much it costs now, before the podcast, the orange refractor BGS 9.5 with the 10 auto, I was curious, it's obviously come down since. And I saw it recently listed on eBay for $50,000. And then I think you, Dave, were saying, or Cossa, you're like, oh, is it the same card? I'm like, no, it's not the same card. And then a couple of days later, I just wanted to check just in case. And sure enough, it's the number 12 out of 25, which is your card that's listed on eBay for $50,000 right now.
Oh, wow.
So it's a third of what you sold it for. And that's what it's listed for. So that doesn't mean that seller is going to get $50K. Actually, just because I'm watching it, I'm not going to buy it at that price. But when you watch it on eBay, sometimes the seller will give you an offer. And then he came back with $45,000, if I want to buy at that price. But the last comp, I think, was a few months ago, not the 12 of 25, but orange refractor, for about $26,000. So that was the last sale. That's what you're looking at in terms of the value of the card right now. So there you go. You sold at the right time.
That's crazy. I was saying, we should buy it back. Honestly, how great of a story would it be that we bought back our card with this guy's money
at a third of the price that we sold it for?
Yes.
I think it's a great buy still.
Yeah.
In my honest opinion. But so if I had the money, honestly, I would buy it.
If I had the money too, I would go in on it 3 ways with you guys to complete the story. You're right. That would be a better story.
Hey, should we ask Lloyd if he wants to go in as a quarter partner?
I wouldn't be surprised if he just bought it.
I can't trust Lloyd right now, okay? So guys, this is 3 of us. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this episode. He goes in, negotiates it. Oh, guys, it's not listed anymore. So I bought it. Next thing we know, it's at Lloyd's apartment.
Just hanging there. On the table, we broke the boxes.
You know what? That'll be a poetic ending to this story. Last question for you guys. I had a great time catching up and reminiscing about 5 card guys and the Juan Soto story, of course. But why did you guys leave me? Let's go back and then why isn't it really one card guy? I'm just too lazy to rebrand everything one card guy now. It's
okay. You got to keep the trademark. So
right.
You know what, Clark? Ultimately, you're the heart and soul of the group, right? I mean, you're the most knowledgeable. You're the one who brought us together. And yeah, as Kosa had mentioned earlier, I mean, you're the best at execution, especially when it comes to social media, and you're the most persistent. So yeah, it only makes sense that, we would have eventually dropped off and you would have been left alone to kind of, run with it. And you did a great job.
Thank you.
And to be honest, like, I think if I were still with you, I would have, held you down if anything.
Well, and, just with Dave, we're still looking for Connor McDavid future watch. So you're not completely out of the game. I know we're looking for a nice McDavid rookie auto card. So we have that still. We're looking for a good price with that. But Kosa, I don't even have to ask you. You probably, started a million things since you left the sports card. Are you still looking at sports cards? What's your interest when it comes to the hobby?
Yeah, I haven't really looked into sports cards ever since we left that period. And honestly, I had no idea that it would blow up as fast and as much as it did within like 3 years after.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just all credit goes to really you, Clark. I didn't think it would go this far, and just not much. Honestly, there's not even much that I can contribute to, like in this thing. Like I just like to be involved in terms of like buying things or coming up with ideas. But really, at the end of the day, you're the one that executes everything, and you did a really good job with this.
Thanks, Kosa. And like Kosa said, the best way he can contribute is with his cash. But he just did a home reno, so he doesn't have any right now. So when you replenish, let's go in on a big cart together, and then hopefully we have another crazy story like the one you guys shared. But yeah, Dave, Kosa, thanks again. I couldn't think of a better way to kick off season 5 of this podcast. Hard to believe with Hyung and John, and kind of like what you're saying, Kosa, to end things off, that the hobby's grown since you guys left, but a lot of changes, and that's why we're able to still do this podcast, because there's always issues coming up and always news. So yeah, I'm looking forward to 2025 season 5 of a lot more guests as well. And again, Dave, Kosa, thanks for coming on to the pod.
Thanks for having us, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.